Well, yesterday was Election Day, primary Election Day 2020, and we had Matt Brouillette on to kind of preview it. So we get Matt on again today to review it at a little bit later time. He could get up a little later this morning. He is the president of Commonwealth Partners, and he joins us here on WSBA. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Gary. Good to be with you again.
Yeah, you didn't send a card or no flowers, so I thought I'd better call you back and get you on again this morning. But so what's the fallout from yesterday? What did we learn yesterday? Obviously, there were a lot of uncontested races in Pennsylvania, but you had talked yesterday about the governor extending when some of the ballots could be received, even though they have to be postmarked, I believe, yesterday. Talk a little bit about some of the fallout from yesterday, both positive and negative, if they're from your particular vantage point.
Yeah, so rather interesting, Gary, particularly down in the Philadelphia area. You saw a number of incumbent legislators in both the House and the Senate have challengers from the further left. I mean, these folks were already pretty left of center, but they had some big challenges from sort of the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party. And Larry Farnese, who is a state senator, he took the place of, if you remember this name, Vince Fumo, Senate District number 1 there in Philadelphia. Larry just got crushed by a Bernie acolyte. And so you have a Democrat that is as far left as you can be, who will likely be coming to Harrisburg and moving that body even further to the left. You also saw this in a number of House races, in addition to Larry being beaten on the left. I think there will be a number of races that may be too early to call even right now because of mail-in ballots, and as we talked about yesterday, the governor extending some of these deadlines. And I'm not sure where that stands from a legal standpoint, but right now we don't have a 100% of the vote counted in some of these races. So there's still some things that are up in the air, but we saw a surge from the far left within the Democratic Party. The same happened out in Pittsburgh. Adam Ravenstahl may be beaten by someone who is on the further left of that party. So some interesting dynamics happening within the parties in this primary election.
And the question that we don't know the answer to yet is, what will this mean in terms of maybe the national election coming up in November? Does that mean, again, people are going to somehow move further to the left? And if you know, for example, with Joe Biden, the Democratic nominee, who easily won here yesterday, what are people going to do as an alternative to him? I guess a lot of that will depend on who Vice President Biden chooses for his running mate. But, there's a tug in the Democratic Party right now overall to get more to the Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wing of the party. And you'll see, AOC. Thank you. It makes it easier, right? Yeah. I just like saying that name. I think it's a pretty name. But anyway, so, I mean, there's a pull to get there by many in the Democratic Party, including Nancy Pelosi. She's feeling that pressure. I wonder what that's going to mean come November. Again, if we're just looking into the our crystal ball, so to speak.
Yeah, most of these races where you're seeing the Democrats go further left, they're pretty safe Democratic seats. One of the other races that I didn't mention was Dalen Leach. You might recall that name.
Yes.
Looks like he is going to go down to defeat. Of course, he was dealing with sexual harassment charges from many, many years ago. But the person who looks like is defeating him is also, Dalen's pretty progressive left. So, and that's a pretty safe Democratic seat. So you're seeing this where you're probably not going to see competitive races in November, but it's definitely going to be moving the Democratic caucuses in both the House and the Senate further left, which at the same time, you're certainly seeing the Republican caucuses go further right, meaning they're more fiscally responsible and rule of law, constitution, those things, which is really where that window of political, movement has really shifted further to the left in our discussions.
One of the interesting races shaping up here locally is in the 10th congressional district, as far as the congressional seat. and that's incumbent Scott Perry going up now against fellow York County and Eugene DePasquale, the Auditor General. And it looks like DePasquale is going to defeat Breyer in the primary yesterday. But again, when I saw it this morning, it remained too close to call, though we have that DePasquale is going to win that. How do you look at that race? How's that going to shape up? Because both are relatively popular people. Obviously, the 10th Congressional has changed over the last couple of years now to include Harrisburg area and so forth. So it's not just a York County seat anymore. It does include other parts of other counties. So your thoughts about that race?
Yeah. Well, so this in particular has national attention being paid to it because the Democrats have put their sights on Scott Perry. So I think, with Eugene being a statewide candidate, of course, as the Auditor General, there's a lot of interest from the Democratic National Party to weigh in on this particular race. Now, Eugene, and I've known Eugene for a long time, I would say that he used to be more of a blue dog Democrat. Yeah. But certainly as he has been in office and has been courting things from more of a statewide, he has absolutely moved to the progressive left on a lot of his issues. So I guess the question is going to be, is that more representative of this congressional district? Because you certainly have very different candidates in Scott Perry and Eugene DePasquale. So this will be a real, I think, a bellwether, if you will, of if Pennsylvania, in particular this congressional district, is going to move to the left or to the right, because you definitely have very distinct choices in that congressional race.
And, of course, with Mark Meadows moving on to higher aspirations out of the Freedom Caucus, you have Scott Perry kind of moving up the line there into a place of more prominence within that Freedom Caucus in the House. And obviously one of the reasons is he's attracted the targeting, so to speak, of people in the Democratic Party around the country.
Indeed. And I think, while both of them are from York, a lot of this congressional district is in Dauphin, and who's going to appeal to the Dauphin voters, I think, will be a big part of this race. But, I think you're going to see a lot of advertising, a lot of national resources flowing into this race, because I think it is one of the top races, not only in Pennsylvania, but definitely this country.
Matt Brouillette is with us this morning, president of Commonwealth Partners. And, Matt, we've been talking about the movement in some of the southeastern counties here in Pennsylvania toward the progressive left. There was a movement toward Donald Trump in 2016 by many in the country. There was also a movement toward the progressive left then, when you think about all the people who were Bernie Sanders supporters and felt in some way they got jobbed out of the nomination at that time to Hillary Clinton. So I think we're seeing a more serious movement now toward the left in this particular election by important members who want change in that party. And it seems like we've come down, and we've seen this in the COVID situation. I think we're seeing it in other kinds of places where the people who seem to be going in that progressive left, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but where we have a government which originally we thought was of the people, by the people, for the people, the government is getting away from the people who want to have responsibility to govern themselves, and instead let representatives govern us. Is that a fair statement at this particular time?
Well, I think that this is, we're having a discussion on multiple topics, right? I mean, as we talked yesterday, you've got so much going on in our lives and different things weighing on our shoulders, from COVID to George Floyd to unemployment, all of these things. And,
right.
And at the end of the day, a lot of this is going to be a math question, Gary. I mean, we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar budget deficit. And what that does is it puts a lot of constraints on those discussions about, well, do we need a government program for this, or can we afford that? And to me, that's going to really force us to make some of these decisions and compel some conversations that we haven't had to have. I mean, just the other day, you saw that the Turnpike Commission is going to eliminate 500 toll taker jobs. look, these are things that we should have automated and could have automated a long time ago and eliminated. And this isn't about the people who do those jobs. We need to redeploy and create opportunities. And, when our economy was booming, that's when we should have been doing that. But this is where it's forcing some of those difficult decisions that we should have made a long time ago. And I'm hopeful that it will bring people to the table to solve these problems because, we got some serious financial challenges ahead of us, and we can't keep, printing this fake money in Washington, D.C., thinking we can plug our state budget holes. And
that was going to be my next question.
Take this up. Yeah.
It's almost like we don't care about a price tag anymore. We say, oh, we have this emergency, so anything we print, it's okay. I mean, any money we put out there, it's okay. We've had people, even like Governor Wolf, saying, well, take your $600 check or whatever it's going to be and be happy. That's not traditionally where we've been. It's always been the sky's the limit. We want to, do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And yet there is an element in the country that seems to say, well, let the government take care of you. Well, the government is us. That's the only place the money comes from. And when you start to print money that really is meaningless, I mean, you get back to the, old days of our early constitutional government here and our earlier Articles of Confederation government where the money was basically worthless for a period of time, which is why people went around offering certificates of indebtedness. And then we bought those up for pennies on the dollar, and it was basically inflation at its very worst.
Well, yeah, you've got the combination of the COVID exposing our dependence on China, which hasn't been good, yet that's where we've exported a lot of our manufacturing and become dependent. We're realizing that those are some very dangerous reliances that we've had. Of course, they own a lot of our debt. We're going to have to really take a hard look at things that we've been willfully ignorant about. We've wanted to ignore some of these financial decisions and challenges. But at the end of the day, look, if we're interested in passing on this great nation to our kids and grandkids, we better get our fiscal house in order. And this is going to have to happen at every level of government. And that's kind of like the good news of all of these financial challenges that we're facing is that it requires you to make tough decisions that when times are good, you tend to ignore them. You say, yeah, I really need to take care of that, but we don't have to today.
Right.
Well, we're at that have to point that we have got to deal with these.
Matt, as you look ahead to November, obviously the last 3 months may have changed the dynamic of what we were going to vote on. Up until since 1948, any president has a great economy, got reelected. Now, Donald Trump is a different kind of president. We know that. He's a ready, shoot, aim kind of guy when it comes to talking a lot of times. And, I'm not afraid to be critical of the way he governs at times. But, when you look now, 3 months later, what is the major issue for voters in the upcoming general election? What are they going to be looking at? And maybe even 3 months from now, that's going to change even more. But your thoughts on that, about a minute to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Gary, because we were involved in a number of political races. We've been doing polling in various parts of Pennsylvania over the last couple of months. And of course, as you move from coronavirus to the loss of jobs and shuttering of small businesses, those things have changed for people's priorities. And so what we're concerned about today may not be the same thing that we're concerned about come end of October, early November. So It's really hard to predict that because what's at the forefront of people's minds today may be forgotten. I mean, we're a very fickle and fluid people when it comes to these issues. So you have to remain vigilant. But I think that some of these things, I hope, will stay at the forefront because we absolutely need to address them.
Well, and again, the carnage of what has happened to small business will be on the minds of many at that particular point. How governors around the country and the president have handled the COVID-19 is going to be on their minds. And I think also the idea of, do we want to govern as a people, as the citizens of this country, or do we want to let others govern us? I think that's also going to be one of the, in my opinion, the triumvirate of big questions that will be out there. Your final thoughts, 10 seconds.
I certainly hope so, Gary. I think that those are at the core. What America do we want in the future? And we need to vote for those people who share that vision.
Matt, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you for doing double duty here the last couple of days, and that's 2 rounds of golf now that I have to add on, right?
Absolutely. Whatever you say. Thanks, Gary.
Take care, my friend. Matt Brouillette, President of Commonwealth Partners here on WSBA.